there will be no real non-controlled currency in the world.
We're coming for you, banks.
Listening to different podcasts, like in a whole different reality, which they think completely different things about Bitcoin.
They have got my money in their banking system. I should be able to access it, right?
Appler is live.
There's a good number of fucking, like, pretty smart Bcashers.
Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast. Following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency, this is episode number 157, BCH Blaze and Layla lock-in featuring Jonathan Silverblood. Today is Sunday, the 17th of August, 2025. I'm your host, Jeremy. Jet is doing the producing. Quick check on the price. Pump it up. USD $591.21 for BCH. So we're way up there. One BTC sat buys only 200.2 BCH. Shout out to Molecular, who was hanging out for that to hit back into the 100 range, which we did spike into briefly, but just barely missed it at the time I checked the price. The slides, 1 ETH is 771 megasats, so down a little bit on that ratio. Selene 30-day users 578, and the Tokenaut TVL 12,211. Shout out also to Emergent Reasons with the BCH Blaze in the chat. Listener survey 2025. Quick announcement: we are bringing back the listener survey. So if you are listening to this right now, you can go to bitcoincashpodcast.com/survey, SURVEY, and fill out the survey. It's 20 questions, really quick, should only take you 5 minutes. Every question is optional. You don't need to fill out any personal details or anything like that. But we have done it now. This would be what, the third year I think we've done it? Probably, yeah. So every year we get a bit of a sense of how the listeners are feeling, and it's a really good check-in with the vibe in the BCH community. So go fill that out, please. bitcoincashpodcast.com/SURVEY, and we will, of course, do a full episode breaking down the results in a couple weeks' time. Probably not the next episode, maybe the one after or the one after that. Right. Our guest today, returning to the show for maybe his third or fourth appearance, I'm losing track at this point, Jonathan Silverblood, the Blaze and BLISS organizer, chip author, and GP contributor. Welcome back to the show, Jonathan. How you doing, and how's Bitcoin Cash these days?
Thank you, and happy to be back. I'll make a first point to say that I'm not the only Blaze and BLISS organizer, so it's like one off.
But you're the genius. You're the originator. You know.
Yeah, I'm kind of the driving force, the one with the whip.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, so that's you're the organizer of Blaze and BLISS. We'll get into Blaze in a second, but on the GP front, what's going on there?
We're working heavily to get the native wallet going and the templating system going. We have made quite a lot of progress, but we have also taken a couple steps back with our lessons learned and are looking at alternatives to make sure that we don't settle into a given design before we have explored potential other options that may be a better fit. Other than that, of course, we're still working on BCH Bull and AnyHedge. There has been quite a bit of background changes, and so if you use the Bull and you liked it at some point and then stopped liking it, then maybe the things you didn't like have been fixed, and you should go look again.
Yeah, on that, I have not been seeing a lot of green premiums recently. Is that because it has grown to the point that people are just botting to grab the premiums when they go green, or is it because of a change to how the premiums are determined or the liquidity provider? What's going on with that?
There's actually quite a lot of factors that all contribute to this state. So one of them is that we are, the liquidity provider is in a much more balanced state. so it doesn't have as much risk on either side. So whatever contract you do make makes it less balanced, and so it tends to be read in both directions when it is in that balanced state. Another one is that when we get greened premiums, back in the day when we had fewer users and fewer people looking at the premiums, it could take a while before someone noticed that the numbers were there and acted on it. But these days, even small green premiums tend to get taken relatively quickly.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Well,
so-
I guess that's good to hear.
Yeah, it has some benefits and some drawbacks. Then, of course, the amount of liquidity available also matters quite a lot. One of the reasons that we are working on getting the native wallet going and that templating system is because we want to build a decentralized liquidity provider so that we can like open the floodgates and let all the liquidity in, rather than having a situation where we are more like legally tied to in one way or another the liquidity that's being provided.
So anybody will be able to, I'll just be able to take some BCH and chuck it in the liquidity pool, adding liquidity on the maker side for BCH Bull and getting the fees that people are paying on the, there's those two fees. There's the liquidity fee and there's the settlement fee. So the settlement fee goes to you guys and the liquidity fee right now goes to the liquidity provider. But you're saying everyone can be the liquidity provider soon.
Yes, exactly. The same way that anyone can be a liquidity provider on Cauldron. We'll get to a point when we have the tooling ready to make a good user experience for anyone to come in and be one out of a large set of micro liquidity providers for the BCH Bull or hedge contracts in general.
Would that be on a given pair, or am I just going to provide BCH in general?
It's not exactly clear what the conditions like and under what structure it will be, but it is guaranteed that it will be non-custodial, and that if there are options to be made, those will be chosen by you, not by us.
Damn. Okay. All right. Well, I'm definitely excited for that. That is sounding really good. I was listening to the GP Spaces the other day with Imaginary Username talking to the Cauldron guys, and they were discussing the difference between BCH Bull currently, but not in the future, being a one-to-one match service. So you can't just have open liquidity versus Cauldron, which you can. Anybody can just go on there and add liquidity into any of the pools. And that has been probably one of the main reasons that Cauldron have been able to grow without putting a large effort into attracting liquidity specifically, although they are now doing that. Like they said on the show, they were already working with some partners in the background to bring that in. But we might then get to a point where both of those products are actively seeking liquidity to get things moving even faster, and then they're also growing organically from community interest and liquidity provision, right? So that's just like amazing to hear.
This is a kind of classic chicken and egg problem. When GP started building AnyHedge many years ago now, the idea of doing decentralized finance applications in Bitcoin Cash was non-existent. Like it was something like, yeah, we should be able to do it, but no one is actually doing it. And when you have that, no one expects there to be such applications, then of course you also don't have people ready to put their money in to be liquidity providers themselves. And so in the environment where we started, if we had not sourced liquidity by other means, we would have just failed and fell over. It would have been a nothing burger. But now that we have improved the scripting language massively over the years, and we've also added both NFT markets in form of TapSwap and fungible token markets in form of Cauldron, and I'm expecting to see competition on these over the coming years. With that also comes the expectations from the users that they should be able to participate, and more users with liquidity wanting to be able to participate is going to be there and be available. So from an addressable market perspective, if you try to market a product or service to a very small group that you have no mechanic of growing, then it doesn't matter how good your product actually is, right? You saturate that market, and then you don't get sufficient enough volume to matter. And so when we started, like, one of the core missions that we had was to demonstrate and prove to everyone else that this is actually possible and this is actually meaningful. And most important of all, you can do this and be profitable. Because if no one demonstrates profit in the first case, then there will be no copycats and the market doesn't grow, right? So someone needed to be first. And in those conditions back then, we had to source the liquidity ourselves. In a couple of years from now, I'm pretty sure that the standard model is going to be not like a centralized liquidity provider counterparty for any of the services. It's all going to be very chaotic and very decentralized.
Yes, well, great to hear it. And like you say, it was just a different time. I think that's something people often really forget to factor into things. In fact, a lot of the promise of BCH is kind of still in the future. Compared to where we were 5 years ago, it's much more easier to see. It's much more realized in things like BCH Bull, in Cauldron, in the protocol upgrades, in the better wallets that we have, in the better tooling, in the growth of this show, in the other people who've come in. It's the same way, like you're saying, with the liquidity for promoting BCH. You know, I've been able to grow this show. And at the time when I started it, there was essentially no dedicated BCH news or promotion just focused on doing that, and that has also started growing. You know, we've got the GP Spaces, Fiendish and Friends runs sometime, and he's now starting up dedicated stuff. You've got Bitcoin Cash TV, you had the BCHF weekly news, all these different things like start coming up. Paul's channel as well, Caesar shouts us out on YouTube all the time. Ryan, shout out to him, was actually going before me, but he was probably the only one, and he doesn't like cover things in enormous detail or irregularly. He fits it in with everything else he's doing. So yeah, it's kind of that same thing. As we're making the potential more visible, it's attracting more eyeballs, more liquidity, and that snowballs on itself to everyone's benefit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you had a very long list there. I'm just going to add Riften Labs and Paytaka because they're also doing market and outreach. And in such an extensive list, it felt right not to include them.
yes, and that's true. And they are kind of good examples in the sense that they are doing the outreach on behalf of their product, which is something that people have said many times in BCH, like, oh, if you get the products, then people will market the products, and then that in turn will market BCH, right? That's different to like this show or like Paul's YouTube channel or something, but it's that same chicken and egg problem. You need to get the ball rolling to get people to come in to build the products, to get Moria is younger than this show. The Cauldron team, that's younger than this show, but Paytaka is older. So to be fair to them, they were already rolling before I started doing the show. Yeah. All right. I got to ask you about this TVL then, because at the peak, I believe BCH Bull hit about 28,000 BCH TVL. Then there was a massive market liquidation. I can't remember when, but there was at some point at which the BCH price just like dropped a ton. The whole crypto market did, really. And loads of people got liquidated. And then the TVL fell down to about 6K. And now it's up to like 10 or 11K, seems to be recovering over time. Now, that's, of course, the functioning of the market. And it's actually the whole point of something like BCH Bull, that when there was that giant liquidation, obviously people on the wrong side got liquidated, but nobody got rugged. Like nobody didn't get money that they should have, right? But I was very impressed to see that was a very large drawdown, but then the recovery is organically happening over time. And of course, now 10K BCH is more USD than it was then, because the BCH price has also risen in the meantime. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that. Did that create any hardship internally? How are you doing with such a like that's a huge drop, right? 28K to 6K. That's a 75% plus drawdown. How did you handle that?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. We ended up talking about it at some point. Clarification. I actually think that even with the price increase, we're not past our previous all-time high.
Yes,
we're quite a bit from. And you're absolutely right. That liquidation event was brutal. So on our side, like we're working with a liquidity provider, and this liquidity provider is doing liquidity for an entirely novel and new protocol and a hedge. That there is no established mechanics that tells you what to do in order to do it right. And so setting up all the premium rules, doing all the calculations, and figuring out how much money you should ask of people in such a way that you both doesn't die when this happens and also keeps volume going, right? Be still attractive to users. That is something that, like if you look at a different platform, like traditional platforms where you have similar, like maybe perpetuals contracts or other type of contract, that those markets, they have fixed criteria in the sense that like all the liquidity ends up being kind of in the same bucket. So maybe they offer a 3x leverage for a specific date, then all the 3x leverage contracts settle on that date, and all the liquidity balances towards that one point in future with the same leverage and the same conditions. And a hedge is relatively unique in the sense that it actually allows you to pick your duration like down to the second, how long you want it to go. And you can set your duration in multiple decimals. You can take whatever duration at. And so making an algorithm that works under these conditions is novel. It's new. It's something that we have not been able to find any like previous established body of work that tells you do this and you'll be fine. And so having a liquidity provider doing this and working and getting traction is kind of nice, but we always kind of wondered, like, will it survive an actual big drawdown, an actual big like bull market pop when it goes off? And yeah, we're kind of happy to say that, yeah, the liquidity provider didn't die. The liquidity provider is still here. It's still providing liquidity. You can still make contracts. And the estimations and the expectations for this event that we had, that the liquidity provider had, it's so hard to keep these apart sometimes.
Yes.
The expectation that the liquidity provider had here beforehand, they were not entirely founded in what actually happened in the end. And so along the way, it has been taken harsher and harsher protections to make sure that it doesn't end up in a state where it's losing money to the point where it can no longer provide a service. And I think this is fine. I think a liquidity provider gets to do whatever decisions they want. They get to serve whatever they want. If the liquidity provider at some point decides to do something that is so drastic that we at GP can't keep offering our product, then we're going to have to find more liquidity providers with different views on how the world works. But once we have a decentralized liquidity provider, that's no longer a problem, right? Because then you have the entire market with all the diverse opinions sitting there taking all the kinds of market making
Risk
positions.
Yeah.
And it kind of sorts itself out.
Yes, amazing. Okay, so like in that moment, you have a bit of a crisis, but the whole system holds up under stress, which is of course the only way that you could prove that it worked, right? If you've never had that kind of stressful event, now you say you have the prior precedent that you can point to and say, BCH Bull has survived a 75-80% drawdown in terms of TVL and is recovering. Do you have any thoughts on, have you made any changes? As obviously the decentralized liquidity, like you said, is coming, but is there anything else that you sort of learned from that experience, or you can give us a behind the scenes look into something that's been changed? Or
Yes, so the liquidity provider has most likely learned a bunch of things along the way. Again, this was novel when we started, and that's kind of the outcome we're at. I can't go into much detail, of course.
Yes.
But I will say, again, like if you used the bull before and for some reason you think it's no longer worth your time and you've left that ecosystem and doing something else, now it's a good time to come back and look again, because that period after the liquidity event is behind us, and lessons learned have been applied.
Yes. Okay. Excellent. And what about the recovery, or the regrowth of the TVL? Of course, we're seeing TVL in BCH as a whole is growing, which I'm super pleased to see. Mori is growing. Cauldron is growing. We showed a graph on the show recently of that. Even like Badgers has been really impressive in getting 366 BCH in terms of time spent to TVL on the app. I'm sure Sayoshi is number one in terms of actual TVL, and liquidity attracted. So honestly, we got to get him cracking on some more TVL style products, because he seems to be doing the best job for ours investors so far. But regardless, do you have any thoughts on the growing TVL in BCH as a whole, and BCH Bull's part in that?
Yes, on a whole, it's very clear that we are growing because we are laying foundations, right? We are making it possible to build more types of app by improving on our scripting engine. And so, yeah, we expect the BCH as a community to just keep growing in terms of TVL. When you're looking at BCH Bull, remember we came in here and the number one problem that AnyHedge as a protocol was designed to solve was volatility. And we learned along the way that people who want volatility is one set of users, and people who want more volatility is another set of users, like the two sides of this. And so there's actually a lot more people who want volatility than there are people who want to get away from it, according to our estimates. And so we're at a point where, like, roughly speaking, I might say something like, 80% of the volume is coming from people who want volatility, and about 20% of the people who don't. So in that part where we talk about the people who don't want volatility, you can also look at the market that has happened so far. So we started out being like the only non-custodial and practical mechanic you could do to protect yourself against volatility. And we have seen people starting to build on AnyHedge. For example, there was an integration in the Paytaka wallet, and there is a stablecoin being built on it today. But we have also seen other market participants providing different solutions to it. Moria is the one that is largest now, but there is more coming. And so I would argue that growth of the hedging side of the protocol has grown despite these things, but it would have grown a lot faster if it still was the only one, maybe. Or maybe not, because the other ones also brought in a larger addressable user market. So on the stability side, we're going to be competing with the other solutions, and I expect all of the parties in our ecosystem to grow over time with this. But on the speculative side, on the trading side, we haven't seen any large amount of competition. And so that is where we have like most of our growth, I would say.
All right. So it'll be interesting to see if that does, like you say. I'm also kind of expecting we have TapSwap, we have Cauldron, but we should probably see, again, as the user base grows at some point, we'll see different or better or alternative markets, popping up, competitors to those, and possibly also with the speculation side of things, BCH focused trading essentially. Well, we're still sort of waiting on BCH gurus to come out with their prediction markets. That could also be one thing in a similar direction, right?
Yes. So actually, I can speak quite a bit on this point as well. So when we made AnyHedge in the first point, we ended up doing a lot of different things, right? We ended up helping source that liquidity. We built an automated settlement service. We built a front-end application. We built a lot of separate components to make this actually work. Now, today, there are more users and there's more variety of these components, but our core goal was never that we should provide everything. We never wanted to be all of these roles in this ecosystem. We wanted to deliver the NHEDGE contract and made sure that it operated smoothly and provided value to people. And we expected to take a very small cut from a very large amount of usage. Now, we have gotten our small cut, and the amount of usage is actually respectable given the size of BCH's ecosystem, but is nowhere near as large as we want it to be and are still working to make it be. But one thing has changed between now and then, is that while we back then made our settlement service and said that this is the part that's going to earn GP money, we are going to provide like the most robust, the most reliable automation mechanic for NHEDGE contracts, and then we will help as many people as possible build NHEDGE related products so that they have a need for our automation services. While that has worked out to some degree, we're now seeing a lot of different contracts that aren't NHEDGE. And each of those ecosystems are needing to build their own automation mechanics. They're needing to build their own bespoke servers and manage things. And if you're an app developer, maybe you don't want to build all of your app at the same time. Maybe you don't want to be the expert at every single thing you do. Maybe you want to have something that just kind of works, and so you can focus on like the front-end app that drives users instead of focusing on the back-end automation. And from this perspective, we are currently in a fragmented state in BCH where each service builds their own. And so each of them are going to have to go through the same growing pains, and they're going to have varying quality. And if one of them is successful, it doesn't strengthen the other ones. So one thing that we want to do, once we want to build going forward, is a generalized automation service where you can give it essentially any Bitcoin Cash contract and tell it how that contract works in such a way that we will monitor for the conditions, specifically Oracle messages in this context and time and the blockchain. And then whenever a contract can be executed according to some rule, we would then just execute that part. And to do this, we need a lot better tooling than we have today. And this is one of the many reasons why we're building our native wallet and the templating engine. Because if we can describe the domain knowledge that is required to build and operate a contract inside of a template, such that anyone who uses that template does not need to be a domain expert, then you get to a point where a generalized settlement service becomes possible. You get to a point where people like the guys behind Moria, they could just go to this service and say, hey, any loan that needs to be liquidated at any given point, here are the data and here's the template. And the generalized settlement doesn't even understand what is a loan. It doesn't understand what does liquidate mean. The only thing it needs to understand is this template says that there is an action that can be taken, and that this action that can be taken can only be taken under these conditions. And when those conditions arise, the actions should be taken. And so the settlement service just makes transactions in an automated fashion. So if we can get to a point where our templating system gets strong enough to be able to do this, and we can build a generalized settlement service, then not only do we get a much better state where, like, if Moria grows, then everyone gets a more reliable settlement service. If BCH Bull grows, everyone gets a more reliable settlement, because the settlement service itself is now shared. It also gets to a point where it makes economical sense to host and develop only the settlement service, so that you can truly focus on doing your one thing really good, instead of spreading out your efforts and being kind of good in a lot of different things, but not really an expert.
Yeah, perfect. So this is necessity is the mother of invention in that regard. Now that we've got the DeFi stuff into the protocol layer, and then that's slowly been improving over time. And then we have some tooling, but it's still not great. And now we have several products. So people are starting to think about what you could generalize between those. You're getting onto the XO stuff. You mentioned it just briefly before, but what more detail can you give it? I believe there was chat. I don't want to say promises, but I believe there was chat that was a Q3 or Q4, we'd see some kind of open beta for that, and then maybe a prod release in the new year. Is there any updates or anything you can say on that timeline?
Yeah, I can't give any commitments, and I can't give you any information with any amount of certainty that you don't already have. What I can say is that what we have done is that we have built a wallet that can do some things, and we have built it on an architecture that looks in a certain way. And we are looking at other ways we could be doing this that might work out better. And we believe that we can do better. And this is also, like, if you go back and you look at all the various actors in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem, and you ask, how long do they live? Right? How long does a product that makes it into BCH stay around? Then the answer so far has been that it varies quite a lot. A lot of products stay for a short time. Some products have been around for a long time. Some places like exchanges that benefit from like the node being stable have been able to support it for quite some time. But one thing that I have found is that if you build fast and break things, you end up in a situation where over time the technical debt and the problems that can arise from that kind of grows in an uncontrollable way, and it's not healthy or doesn't make financial sense to end up having to fight that maintenance burden after. And I'm not saying anyone in particular, and also Dager, if you're reading this, my comment there was not a reference to your point on BLISS, it was just a generalized thing. So at GP, we always take not intentionally slow, but intentionally steady approach. We always make sure that we try to exhaust the alternatives, that we try to understand the implications, and that we try to not just go with the first thing that shows us something on our screen, but kind of sit down, talk about it, internalize things, look at it from what could happen if we did things differently, and that takes time. So yeah, I can't promise any timeline, but what I can promise is that we have found good ways, and we are working on finding much better ways, and I think we're going to end up on something great, even if it takes a little bit longer.
Okay, all right. Good things take time. I certainly appreciate that. I mean, it is really kind of the case. I always think of that scene from The Gambler with Mark Wahlberg and that other guy, and the guy asked him when he's trying to loan the money from him, he says, "Does your grandfather take risks?" And Mark Wahlberg nods, and the guy says, "Well, I guarantee he did it from a position of fuck you." And it's just kind of this point that, yeah, you do want to be trialing things, testing things out, experimenting with things, but you don't want to just be doing that. You want to have stability, a strong foundation that persists over time, and then you can kind of throw darts at the dartboard from there. That's the same thing I'm trying to do, with this show. Like you say, at the time after the XEC split, there was not many things that had been around in the BCH ecosystem for a long time. Like GP had for a few years, the Townsville guys, the Paytaka guys, but it's a short list really when it comes down to it. Some of the node implementations, Verde or whatever, but otherwise, yeah. And I think we've done a good job of turning that around in the ecosystem. The podcast is now in its fourth year, coming up to 5 years. GP is still here. You've got Moria and the Cauldron guys have been cracking for a while, right? That's going to build up and snowball for sure. Matthew, a lot of the stuff he's doing, yeah, I think we're heading on the right direction there. But it's stability first, and then innovation second, right?
Yeah, I want to paint a little bit more fair picture. So it actually matters a lot what you're building. If you are building like a house of cards, and you are at the very top of that house of cards, then assuming the foundation under you is relatively stable, then you can actually try quite a lot of things. You can break and you can fail, and it's kind of okay. But if you're building something that's at the very foundation layer, like 6 floors down, then kind of adjusting yourself just a little bit can break a very large amount of other parts. And so one way to kind of look at this is, if I go by personal experience, I have this Electrum Cache library that just lets you talk with a Fulcrum server that we built out of necessity when the Bitbox APIs wasn't stable and reliable enough. That library, I could have gone with an idea of like move fast, break things, update regularly, and to some degree I have, and I've actually also caused a little bit of problem for people by doing it in there. But on the large scale, like looking back at it, it's been a pretty stable thing, something that you can actually rely on. But if you're not building a foundational library at the bottom, you don't need to go that route. You don't need to go slow and steady like GP if your main task is to build, say, a dashboard that gives you stats. Like if you're doing, like, say, the Talkanote website, feel free to move fast and break things if that's what you enjoy doing. That will get you much further than doing what you don't enjoy doing. But if you're building something that you hope or intend for a lot of other actors, and particularly a lot of money in terms of volume, should rely on in the future, then you need to really, really take care of all your edges so that they're not dangerous for people.
Yes, I think even Celine, I think we had some issues there when you updated that. Although I was very glad to see that, actually, because you do want to see maintenance and improvements going on at those lower levels of the stack. But like you say, it just needs to be done more slowly and considerate, in a considerate way, with an upgrade path that people can move forward sort of as the resources become available. And then over time, it sort of gets baked in like a sort of multi-layered pie into the rest of the cake, into the rest of the ecosystem. Okay, cool. I love it. All right. Well, let's talk about the innovation that we're doing at the forefront then. So we've got BCH Blaze that we announced 2 days ago on the 15th during the bank run. Igniting BCH innovation through competition is my sort of current slogan for it, but we'll see, maybe we innovate on that. And the idea is to be an online hackathon to help build developer interest in BCH and the Layla lock-in. It's kind of like BLISS, but also kind of not, where it's online and competitive rather than being in person and cooperative. So we've got a bit of a yin-yang vibe going on there, and we have an announcement video that I'm going to get Jet to play, and then we'll get your thoughts on what is Blaze all about. All right, Mercy is for the week.
What do you want from me tonight? You wanna burn,
I was born with something inside me that refuses to settle for average, and am grateful for it. I am a warrior, a destroyer, a force of pure violence, and all that I desire is the sheer glory of victory. Mercy is for the weak, surrender for those who have no conviction. I am coming for this world, and all it has to offer. Nothing will stop me. I care for nothing more than to see my name carved in history, and for the world to bow before my greatness. I am coming for it all.
So for the listeners on the audio podcast, it's just a little timeline of events in BCH history, spanning from the split with BTC in 2017 and then going forward to the present day, kind of synced up with the dramatic narration of BCH fighting through its different problems and eventually starting to gain momentum. So You're the mastermind, Jonathan. Tell me, BCH Blaze, what is it all about?
It's hard to put a pin on it. So it's actually a lot of things on the side, but let me start by describing a nice feedback loop that I hope to achieve. So imagine you have people coming to BLISS and they see all these cool upgrades and they want to kind of get involved, they meet people, that's all nice and good, and then they go home and they have nothing actionable really to do. Then at next upgrade lock-in happens, there's this hackathon. Now they get to actually participate and do something. This is like a call to action that didn't exist here before. And if they do that and they compete and they win, they get tickets to the next place. So the cycle repeats. Now, if they are outsiders who are just looking into the BCH ecosystem and like they don't want to commit to going all the way to a conference, like flying tickets and paying for hotels, for a coin they don't really care that much about, but they're still curious, they're still interested, then Blaze offers them the opportunity to have an online event instead. And they get to test and try, and if they don't like it, they walk away. But if they do like it, or they win, they get BLISS tickets, and so they come to BLISS next year, and the cycle repeats. So it's kind of designed so that we try to get this continuously growing, like BLISS tells you what's going on, what's the upgrade we have been doing, what can you do now, why are we great? And it's focused quite a bit on making sure that builders appreciate that conference. And then on the Blaze side, they get to apply everything, and if they I've gone through that cycle. So I think it's a nice thing. The other thing is that BLISS is very much a celebratory thing, right? It's a pat on our own back saying, hey, we did good. We got here. We should be proud of ourselves. But that is not very inviting to external parties who weren't there to do the work that led to this result. They don't feel proud of themselves because they weren't the one that made it happen. And to some degree, that can be a barrier to entry. And so Blaze offers the people outside of BCH an excellent opportunity to come into this ecosystem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so just to give a little bit of background for anybody wondering, so Blaze is being run by you, by me, by Ryan. So that's the BLISS team. And then we also have Jerry has come in to give us some more expertise on the hackathon side. So we've announced it now. It's being open for registration on the 1st of September. And then the actual hackathon will be from the 15th to the 23rd of November. So it is timed with the lock-in for the upgrade, which I'm calling Layla because the BCH community seems to like that name. I floated a couple of names in the Telegram chat.
It is
We're
Layla.
calling it Layla. It's Layla. Okay, well, good. I feel like I haven't seen anybody who didn't like that, but for people who didn't see that all kind of start, the idea was the upgrade is probably going to involve loops. So then LA, and then LA, it's like got a loop in the name, and also because it's Layla, LAY, Y is in Spanish is and, so it's like LA and LA, which has kind of like a loops vibe, but also sort of Bitwise, because Bitwise is about shifting things over one position. Then obviously it's a female name that ends in A, and people just seem to love it and respond to it. So I haven't seen anybody off board with that. But anyway, so now we've got the Layla lock-in in November, and then that will be going live in May of next year. The desired team size is 1 to 4 people, and we're going to have at least 11 BCH in prizes, which is fixed in BCH actually. So as the price has been going up, the value of that has also been going up, and teams will be required to use at least one of the 2026 chips on the testnet and chipnet in the lock-in, and then hopefully to be able to go live and actually roll it out in production for May. Can you tell me a little bit more about that aspect of it? Some sort of more detail to the event like that.
Yeah. So sometimes it can be very hard to explain to someone else like why this upgrade is good. Why should we have loops in BCH? Right? It's not because you want to sit in a car and drive around a house. That's something a normal person might relate to, but it's kind of non-tangible. It's like hard to pin down. And if you're a programmer, it kind of makes sense. No worries if you're a programmer. But for most people, how do you explain like what's a value proposition? And so when you're running this Blaze competition that uses these upgrades, you shift the explanation away from being the technical, you can iterate over this thing 5 times. And instead you shift it to, yeah, you can do these recurring payments that you couldn't do before. Or, yeah, you can have this dashboard that aggregates data on chain in a way it couldn't do before. And so you start getting like practical uses that people can relate to, and you also start getting like demonstrations that says that, hey, yeah, with this, it's actually doable. It's not a theoretical thing anymore. We said we might be able to do this. We think it's going to be able to do this. But then after someone builds it and runs it on the ShipNet during the competition, well, that's it. We know it can do it.
Yeah, obviously this is going to be our first time running it as well, so it is a bit of a experiment on our part in the same way that BLISS was. So we'll run it and we'll see how things go. But like you were saying about the cycle of people kind of maybe getting interested in Blaze, it's a bit lower barrier to entry in the sense that anybody can participate online, even if it's just them or they have a small team. But my hope is that we'll get people making projects at the hackathon, and then the winners will get some BCH, they'll get some BLISS tickets. But I'm hoping we can also build, whether the winners or not, that we will be able to assist projects that have potential, that people get excited about, that maybe see some community reaction, is we'll be able to link them up to investors, to existing BCH tooling, to marketing and promotion. If they need that, maybe they can come on this show and talk about what they built, etc. Right? And then we'll get to a point, hopefully, maybe this first year we'll see how we do, but it might take a couple of iterations to get it flowing smoothly. But you'll be able to pipeline projects that are started kind of at the grassroots level in Blaze, that then by BLISS are ready to actually do a launch on mainnet. Maybe they've been made a bit more slick, they've been iterated on in the meantime, and then they can do a big launch at BLISS. And then, like you say, we have a virtuous cycle where then that creates a lot of news and interest and hype at BLISS, which then gets people to think, oh, how do I get into this cycle for next year at the Blaze lock-in, right?
Yeah. So actually, let's talk about it from the participant side and just go through 2 possible outcomes here. So say you're a hacker, right? Or some kind of developer, or some kind of person wanting to either build something in the space that you know what it is. I want to build that thing, right? Or you're a person who have decided that I'd like to build in that space, but I don't know what yet. These 2 participants, these 2 roles, make perfect sense to come to Blaze. Because if you want to build that specific thing and you want it to be successful, you're going to need a handful of things in order to reach that success. Most likely, you're going to need liquidity, you're going to need marketing, you're going to need money, right? And so if you participate in BLISS with your idea, with your project, and you build it and prove that it's a good thing, at least a proof of work, or like something tangible there, then in the prices, you have a little bit of marketing, right? Because you will be covered and you might be offered to come on this podcast. And when it comes to liquidity, right, with the additional information available, right, with the fact that you get a little bit of marketing, people with liquidity gets easier to find, and they might find you. And we know that some people who have liquidity are going to be watching these things as they happen. They're going to be very interested in this development. And we also know that, like, if you do a really good job of making something and explaining why it's valuable, but you don't have enough resources to actually commit to like drop your day job and actually go to work and do this new thing, then we also know that there is a bunch of people who are investors in various crypto ecosystems who are going to be watching this. And if you do a good job, you might get set up for a meeting with an investor. You might get set up with a meeting with someone who wants to provide liquidity. You're going to, as a winner or having done something quite nice here, you're going to be able to leverage the network and contacts of some of the industry leaders. So that's if you know what you want to do, right? You want to build that thing. And what if you don't have that idea? What if you don't have this thing that you want to do? But you know that Bitcoin Cash looks really interesting. You believe in the vision of it. You believe in where it's going. And you kind of just want to be there. Well, Blaze is good for you too. Because as you participate in that and demonstrate that you have skill and talent and that you're willing to apply and commit to that vision or things in that space, you're also going to become a candidate for hiring. And we know that there are going to be companies looking at what we're doing at BLISS explicitly for the sake of trying to find recruitable talent, find people to hire to have in their teams. And so this is an excellent opportunity for anyone who wants to be in BCH as a developer. And you don't have to be a programmer to do this, right? It said team sizes of 1 to 4, right? So if you're really interested and really good at some other required part of building a product or service, so you are good at marketing, so you are good at management, so you are good at administration, so you're good at finances, it doesn't really matter what it is, you should maybe register and go see what ideas pop up on the DoorHack platform, see what other people are talking about and doing, and see if you can join a team. Because it might lead to a new job for you. It might lead to personal fulfillment. It might lead to actual investor money or the resources required for you to build the thing you want to do.
Yeah, you could definitely make some new friends. And like you say, we're going to be trying to do everything we can, obviously, to help people who are coming in fresh. So if you're coming in fresh and you want to bring some team members, please do that. But also if you're just kind of showing up and you're like, this is the skill set I have, well, there's going to be other people that are going to be looking for team members to fill slots, or maybe you can make a team with several other people that are in a similar position, and then it'll kind of go from there if you win a prize. So the prizes we have slated at the moment is first prize 5 BCH, second prize 3 BCH, and third prize 1 BCH. Also 1 BCH for a community voted prize, and then we're going to have some amount of prizes that are bounties on doing specific challenges or using specific technology or building a specific product or something that somebody in the ecosystem really wants to see. Which brings us to sponsoring as well too. We have some sponsors already, but we are open to more on several fronts. You can of course get in contact with myself and Jonathan if you want to be a sponsor of the whole event. You can do that. If you want to sponsor a bounty for a particular type of project, or there's something that you wish someone would build but nobody has, well, this is kind of a cheap way to get the opportunity validated, because if you put even just a small bounty, that will already create the stakes for somebody who's already going to be at the hackathon to maybe think, you know what, I'll go for this, and then I've already got that bounty in the bag, and then they could potentially be the collaborators that you need to launch this idea more seriously. Or if not, you can see what their attempt is, where they run into problems, what impresses you about it, what doesn't it. So it's giving a lot of scope for people in the ecosystem to sort of trial launch ideas they want without even needing to go to all the effort to find talent and all that stuff. You can just straight up do that. And there's also been suggestions, we still need to organize this, but that we can also have a prize pool that anybody, maybe we'll just put up an address that anybody can just donate into, and that will also go into the prize pool, perhaps split into first, second, third. We already had people asking, like, I would love to, crowd fund the prize pool and make it bigger in order to attract more interest to Blaze. So I think we'll do that as well. Do you have any comments on the opportunities for sponsors, Jonathan?
Yes, I do, absolutely. But before I go to the sponsors, I kind of want to talk about the prices a little bit before we kind of walk over them. So there's also a potential for at least one unknown price that we're not going to share yet what it is. We'll share it sometime in the future before the hackathon actually kicks off. But we have some ideas that we're working on. So I'm just hinting that there's going to be more. And also, if you are a person who came to BLISS like last year or the year before that, and you had a good time, and you really like BLISS, then you might want to go to the hackathon and win a prize. Doesn't matter what product you build or anything like that, because there's going to be some pretty cool BLISS tickets that will not be identical to the other BLISS tickets. They're going to be unique to the people who participate and win at BLISS. What they are, we haven't really decided on yet. We're still thinking about that, but they're going to be unique and they're going to be standout.
Yeah, so we'll have some, BLISS tickets also in the prize pool, so you can, of course, win those. Obviously, if you do win the hackathon and you are getting interest from people around that idea, it's a perfect segue, as Jonathan says, to actually come along to BLISS and then be there in person and probably meet a lot of those same people who you'll need to collaborate with. Of course, you can also always just resell it on the secondary market, so there's no like lock-in or anything like that. Talk to me a little bit about as well, we're going to do a live stream. So this is going to be an online focused event, which means people can join in from anywhere in the world, but also we want to serve it to the audience anywhere in the world. We obviously do the live stream for BLISS, but a large part of the experience there unavoidably just you have to be there kind of thing. With Blaze, it's not necessarily going to be like that. It will be that anywhere in the world you can watch the stream and be a part of the action and excitement. And given especially that it will be operating over like a whole week, the hackathon itself, but also in the lead up and the judging and afterwards for people in different time zones. Can you speak to that maybe this can help us to hit a more global audience?
Yeah, so the Blaze event is a competition, right? So it also has a certain you have to be there charm, in the sense that like if you're there and building, you will see a very different view of it than if you're looking in as an outsider. But I will say that over that week and sometime before it and maybe sometime after, there's going to be a bunch of media coverage. The people who participate, we're planning to do some interviews, check what products they're doing, like what their biddles are, and there's going to be how to say this. So I'm not sure if we're actually going to do like a 24-hour a day, 5-day long stream. I don't think that's the case right now. So what I think we're gonna have is we're gonna have some coverage before. Maybe there's a workshop or two where we cover like how to do things within these ships and how the tooling work, and that would be live streamed and commented on. Maybe we'll interview the people who participate. Maybe some of the people who participate are noteworthy in some way. For example, if you go look at the hackers, the people have already signed up and say they are interested and they might do something. You can find that one of them is a previous winner in a different hackathon that had like 440 people in it, I think. And so it might be someone worth interviewing at like, hey, well, what makes you interested in Bitcoin Cash? And kind of like see what is it that we are doing right that makes people want to come to us. So that is interesting perspectives to get. Now, I think in terms of an actual like live stream, I'm pretty sure that the announcement of the winners, right, is going to be pretty cool. Where you show off all the project and like say why the various people win and explain that part. So that one you don't want to miss.
Yes. What about people have asked, like, will they need to build something brand new, or can they like for existing teams in the BCH ecosystem, for instance, can they look at something that they already had on their roadmap, but maybe makes sense to do as part of a hackathon and build that? Do they have to do something from scratch? And also, that's maybe for more teams in the ecosystem or who are already affiliated with BCH, but people who are somewhat outside or are maybe joining the ecosystem. For instance, this week I was talking to some of the guys at Thorchain and Ruggira, and they were interested in this, but they said, like, what if we build, an integration or something? Will there be an actual requirement that we are building something directly into BCH for the competition?
So if you're going to participate, you don't have to start from like scratch, right? You don't have to go back to zero. You can build something on top of a product you already have. Of course, you should disclose what you are building on, so we can clearly see what's being done in the competition, what's being done outside. But I think a more important point is that you have to use one of the features in the ships that gets locked in, right? You can't do something that's BCH related that doesn't use one of these features, because the point, like one of the key and core point of Blaze is to create a situation where we build up this hype and momentum for the next upgrade and make sure that people are ready to utilize these features on upgrade day. So we want people to get in there, get their hands on the tooling, and to start working and building on those features.
Yeah, okay. So definitely there's going to be some kind of requirements, but we are going to try and keep things fairly open, right? Because we don't want to obviously restrict people's creativity, but at the same time, it can't just be like a free for all. There does need to be some actual tie into BCH.
Yeah. So actually, look, if you go in and you try to build something and it doesn't, really need the features of the chip lock-in, then in theory, you could just put an empty loop in your contract and say, hey, my contract has loops now, right? You can technically do that. But I'm just going to give you a heads of advice. We have 3 people set up as judges, and potentially a secret one coming later. But we have 3 people set up as judges right now. And these are people who know what they're doing. I'll give you a name in a moment. So if you try something like that, they will likely look at your product and say, not a very interesting use of the new features, and they won't rate it high, and therefore your chance of winning gets to be quite low. So on to who they are, okay? So one of them is my co-founder, John Nero at GP, and he has certain peculiarities, things he likes and things he dislikes. And so when you're building your product, it might be worth it to take into consideration things like maintainability or clarity of intent when you're writing your code, so that it's not becoming too hard or too sloppy. Of course, it's up to you how you do it. That's one thing. Then we have ZQuest, or Josh Ellithorpe, previously worked at Coinbase, good infrastructure guy, good guy all around, of course. And he's very technically capable. He's built things all the time. And from his perspective, I think he said maintainability is one of the core things. Right? And then the third guy is Kalen Pugliano, one of the developers on BCH and today, and also the main developer of Fulcrum, the indexer that a lot of us are relying on. And he is really, really hardcore in terms of programming, in my view, much more deep so than I am. And so I think he's going to look at things and, like, if it's poorly architectured or if it's unnecessarily unoptimized, like you're doing something that you really don't need to do, you could just done this in 2 lines, why did you do it in 40? Then he might look at that and, not be so happy. But on the other hand, if you do something really clean and really good, yeah, that's the kind of thing he probably likes. So these people, these judges, they are going to look at the project, and they're just going to rank them in their order, and then we're going to aggregate the rankings to determine the regular prizes.
Yes, and maybe we'll see, but also if we do, a community-funded pool or something like that, maybe we can also have a couple of community judges, or perhaps even you and I, Jonathan and Ryan and Jerry, can perhaps help distribute that funding so that there's also a balance of, everything is not funded purely on deep technical considerations, but maybe some funding can find its way to things that are, a strong marketing idea or that have a very good pitch or something like that. We will try and balance those considerations as well too.
Of course. I think John is probably the one that is closest to that, because he looks at sustainability very clearly too. So if you're trying to demonstrate a product, he might look at that product and ask like, but is it actually sustainable? Will you be profitable and will you survive? And if you're making a product that has like a lot of unanswered questions about how you're gonna pay for the product itself, then that might be a bit of a turnoff. But if you have a really good explanation for why this product should make you a lot of money and be really sustainable and be really valuable to the ecosystem, but you have a kind of shabby implementation of it, well, you can still get ranked high because you're still demonstrating the value of the features.
Yes. Is there anything else you want to add? We're going to talk about the upgrades in a second. So besides that, is there anything else you want to make a point on before we move on?
Yeah, we kind of missed the sponsor side because we jumped between things earlier. So I'll go back to the sponsor side. So before we started organizing Blaze, we made sure that we had a commitment from sponsors that covers the minimum cost that we need to pay in order for it to be executable. But in the coming months, we're actually going to be looking for more sponsors. And if we do get more sponsors, that might mean a larger prize pool, more interest, more people coming. And it's also, if we do get more sponsors in, we can start paying the people who are working on it so that they keep up the interest and want to do it again next year.
Yes. Okay. So if you are interested in sponsoring Blaze, either because you want to get some marketing out there, and there will, of course, be opportunities to do that on the live stream, on the website, in the promotion leading up to it and so forth, or if you want to get the inside track on talking to the actual participants at the hackathon, potentially to hire them to work on something that you want to work with them on, then definitely get in touch with us. Also the same for the participants. If you're confused about anything, you have any questions, of course, you can message me, or you can message Jonathan. You can go on Twitter and talk to the BCH Blaze account that we have now. We have a Telegram group. Those are the places to land and start asking questions. And then the signups is going to be on the Dora Hacks page as well, which is a new platform that we're experimenting with for running hackathons. So all of the information and such will be there. With the upgrade, of course, it is focused on the lock-in. So we are now into August. So we're not like right down to the wire yet, but things are needing to start to firm up a little bit for September and October. People putting out endorsements of the chips that they want to back. In this vein, I ran polls both on Twitter and on Telegram to get a gauge of community sentiment. I have some here for Loops, Pay-to-Script, Bitwise, Functions, and I also ran one for 1 minute blocks under the condition that it was not for this year, but just to gauge interest for a following year. Jet will scroll through these on the slide so that people can have a look at the numbers there. I'm not going to read them all out, but the headline sort of news is that Loops has about 3/4 of respondents on board with doing it, including 15% that were a bit unsure and needed to read up more. So it seems to have very, very strong interest. Pay-to-Script also had about 62% to 65% favoring. Bitwise 73%. And Functions and 1 minute blocks were noticeably less popular or less certain at closer to 50% or just a little less. In the high 40s, actually, 1 minute blocks even edged out Functions in terms of its popularity, which surprised me. I don't know what you make of these numbers here, Jonathan, but I was personally actually quite surprised to see the interest in all of the upgrades was as high as it was. I expected maybe loops to be, higher and so forth. But the community does seem very like innovation minded and very actually pro upgrade at the moment, which I take to be a signal that because the previous upgrades have gone well, have produced results, like there hasn't really been any problems, like that confidence is building. And when you poll a large group of people in this way, you're more likely to get a kind of silent majority or a conservative segment who think, let's, I don't really understand this, or to be a bit confused. But I was very surprised to see actually how high the numbers are. And particularly for loops, pay to script and Bitwise seem to have very, very strong support, and even functions and 1 minute blocks both getting a good representation, if not sort of an overwhelming majority. What do you make of all these numbers and where we're at with these different chips?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying that like these polls are to the general public, and that includes a lot of people that potentially aren't even the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem, even in competing ecosystems. So I would actually argue that it's likely that the numbers are even higher and even better, and I'll explain why. So as you said, it looks to be innovation minded, like people appreciate, embrace innovation, and I agree. People are absolutely demonstrating like a hunger or a desire for improvement. And if you look at past improvements, like you said, it kind of paints a clear picture. So we had a bunch of upgrades before the chip process, and some of them added value, some of them added less value. It wasn't very, very clear on everything. But what was really clear is that we fractured and we fractured and we got smaller and price got worse. Right? That was really, really clear. But since the ship process started going, we have had a case where there is no more fracture. And the things that are coming out are much more focused on providing value than they are focused on providing, say, stability or maintenance features, or things that are like clear on the back end and not so visible to the end user. And I'm not saying that those things are less valuable. Not at all. I think they're really valuable. But I am saying that if you look at the things that are coming out, people are seeing more visible, more tangible improvements coming out, and they're not seeing the fracture. And so if you then go back and you look at like, how did this happen? And then you see that the native introspection and the first big in chip, they came from Jason. And the cash tokens came from Jason. And he has done a couple more before this year. And now he's putting up 3 or 4 of them. And he has managed to succeed at getting strong consensus for his upgrades this far. There's a few that he has conceded. There's a few that have walked back. But that is also a very, very valuable signal. He chooses to walk back when it's not right. He chooses to take longer. PMV3 is no longer here, right? And so we get this confidence in the things that he is proposing because he has repeatedly shown us that he is willing to do the very heavy work of argumenting for why, of figuring out who is involved, of going through all the technical details, of setting up all the stakeholders, talking with all the people. And as one of the parties in the ecosystem that tend to be a stakeholder in most of the things that happen because I'm in GP, I can say that Jason does come and talk with us. We have meetings and we talk, and he has meetings with other people and they talk. And it's really nice to have this active collaboration and communication where we're willing to take a step back, we're willing to listen to each other, and most importantly, we keep improving the things that we have, and only when they are actually ready are they ready. If they're not ready, they'll wait a year, they'll wait 5 years, they'll wait for however long it takes. Again, PMV3 is no longer here.
Yeah, so do you have any take on any of these individual chips? Like, where are you at on loops, pay to script, Bitwise, and functions particularly?
So loops for me is a no-brainer. I know there has been like a controversial point about adjusting a base cost there in the recent days, which have also gotten resolved, is being broken out into a separate chip, and that chip is going to be evaluated on its own. But loops to me, it's a no-brainer. right? It's just a loop. And the risk that loop carried was runaway cost. But we don't have a runaway cost scenario because VM limits applied. And so that kind of solves itself. So I would almost say I'd be furious if loop doesn't make it through, because it's so obvious to me that loops is a really good thing that everyone seems to like. And I think when the stakeholder list comes out, all the people who are on the edge are probably going to just align with what that stakeholder list says. And I know that it's a really good situation. This is me speaking personally, by the way. GP's opinion, GP has made public elsewhere.
Public statement. Yes.
Yes. The Bitwise side is kind of similar. I mean, it's not as big a clear value proposition as loops. Loops are much more practically useful. But also, Bitwise doesn't really have that many things that can go wrong. And so I think Bitwise is also one thing that we really should enable, and the community seems to agree, and I'm pretty sure it's going to lock in. It's one of the three that we have on the Blaze, the DoraHacks website for Blaze, as listed as these are the ones we're working with. And the last one was pay-to-script, right?
Yeah.
So pay-to-script is a little bit of a more mixed bag, because it bundles a handful of somewhat unrelated things, but they're also kind of related because they support the same purpose, the same thing that the user wants to have from it. I'm interested. I'm very interested in where pay-to-script is going to go. I don't know if I have a direct use for it myself, the actual pay-to-script side, but I do have uses for the the increase in commitment size in the cash tokens. So yeah, I hope pay-to-script hash activates, but I hope pay-to-script activates because the community is all on board and wants it, and so that there are other people that have stronger needs for it than I personally do. I'll also make one more mention in pay-to-script hash. In pay-to-script ship, there is a clear and very distinctive statement that says that these scripts shall not have an address format. There should not be a well-defined, clear way to go from this script to an address that people can send money to. And I think that is something that, like in retrospect, with the information I have today, I would argue that maybe we should have done this for P2S to begin with, P2SH to begin with. And I say this mostly because I have one piece of information that most people here does not, and that is the native templating system that I'm working on. With that, the need for addresses kind of goes away and works in a different way. And if we don't need the addresses, and you don't have a natural point where you send money to arbitrary unknown lock scripts or arbitrary known lock scripts, in the case of PTS, then it kind of makes sense that, like, if one wallet wants to do something that is kind of special, and all PTS arguably could be considered kind of special, then the wallet that has information on what they are doing should be the one who kind of decides if someone should be sending money to it or not. Take, for example, if you go find an edge contract that someone else had on chain, and you send money to that contract, it doesn't work. The money just gets locked there. And that is a sink. And that is not a good user experience. And there are people who are losing money to some degree over like poor use where it's manual, where it doesn't have to be manual. We can build better systems. So yeah, I'm looking forward to pay-to-script, assuming that the rest of the market here also, or the rest of the stakeholders also look forward to it. And there are things in there I would personally like to use, but not all of them I have an urgent need for.
What about functions?
Functions is interesting. So my spontaneous reaction is like, compression is good. Like, functions, and that's great. But the more I talk with people who are more technically minded and better educated than I am, the more it's clear that it's a double-edged sword. You can do things with them, depending on how they are made, that are not necessarily only good. They might be only good, but we can prove that they're only good today. And so I'm a bit torn. I also don't really know to what degree we need them once we have loops, because if you can define a function in order to call it, then why can't you kind of like do something like a jump and then loop over things as you need? It's a
That
bit
can be a bit
more
messy,
muddy to
though.
me.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
bit
of
messy.
course they're messy, and the functions are a great way, particularly when optimized through a compiler, right? Then functions make a lot of sense, and in those cases where they are compiled down to the bytecode, you don't really need to worry as much about the edges. The problem is that the blockchain does not enforce that you use a compiler, and therefore people might be using them in ways that may be bad. It's a lot of theoreticals there. And as you hear, I'm not very strongly confident on this matter. And that is also respected in the community, not being very strongly confident. So I think eval, I would be happy if the stakeholders align and said, yes, this is a good thing, or this version of it we all agree on. And I hope they do, because many people claim it's really valuable to them. And I don't want to stand in the way of other people's value. I want BCH as an ecosystem to jump on the fucking rocket ship and fly away. So we need to kind of thread a needle there. But yeah, it's not as clear. And then the last one, the faster blocks. I absolutely want faster blocks. I know that there is more controversy on the faster block side. It's one of the previously enshrined parameters in the way the blockchain works, inherited from Bitcoin. It makes us let Bitcoin-esque if we remove it. But to be honest, I don't care. I don't need to be Bitcoin-esque. I need it to work. I need it to be fast. I need it to be in a way that makes people like my grandma not have an issue with it. And I hit long block times, long confirmation times. I allowed you multiple times every week. Every single week. And I know most people don't, because most people don't live off of Bitcoin Cash, but I happen to do. I happen to make a lot of transactions because that's how I live. And I hit it all the time. And it's no fun anymore. I've grown tired of having slow blocks. Now, would I want it even if it had a bunch of bad stuff with it? No, absolutely not. Would I want it if we didn't know about all the good and bad stuff? No, more research, please. And I can't see a way today where we go from now to lock-in, where all the work needed to convince me that it is an unanimously good thing will happen. I don't.
Yeah,
see
this one
that
isn't proposed for this year. Just to be clear,
yeah, I know.
I ran the poll on the premise that it was speculative
but I wish
for
it
next
was.
year.
I wish it was, and I wish the ship author and owner of that had done more of an effort, because I really wish
he's done a pretty good effort. Shout out Bitcoin Cash orders.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Kudos, hats off, man. But it's still not enough. You know, you can run 90% of the distance there, but if you don't run the last 10%, then you don't get there.
But I think that's partly on the community side as well too. That's been one of the most interesting things. If you look at these polls, I found this very interesting, that 1 minute blocks was actually more popular in terms of, just barely, in terms of yes, let's go for it, than functions. It's actually more popular there, but it did also have, and it even had less people in the maybe camp, but it also had more people who were like an active dislike.
The just and maybes doesn't matter as much as the dislikes.
Yes.
Dislikes are much heavy. If someone has a strong reason why we should not be doing something, then we really need to address that reason in extreme detail and carefulness before we take any kind of action on something. And there are cases where people have done this, and we've gotten to the conclusion that no, your arguments are not valuable enough, and they are maybe nonsensical in some cases, and we've done things disregarding some dislikes. But that's usually been like 1 or 2 persons out of a set of thousands, and their concerns have been clearly documented and like raised to the surface so that anyone can look at them well ahead of lock-in. So I'm not any problems with that. But if you look, like right now, I'm looking at the screen and say 1 minute block and that's 16% dislike or pessimistic, or 14.5 in the other one. If you go back to op-eval or go back one step, I'm pretty sure the numbers for dislike are much smaller. Yeah, 0% and 5% rather than 16 and roughly 16. So yeah, I don't think 1 minute block times is ahead, actually. I think 1 minute block time is behind because it has more contention it needs to deal with.
Yes, but it was, I agree with that, but I also think I was still, again, I've been surprised overall at how positive on these polls. Like, this was the most disliked one. And even then, if it's 16% disliked with, 5 or 10% unsure, so let's say 20% of the poll recipients who had a preference went for, I'm kind of strongly against that. That already strikes me as fairly low in terms of if we have another year, because some humans are conservative, right? There's always going to be some element of, I don't like this because it's different and it's new. So there's always going to be a convincing, process. And then sometimes obviously people have good reasons and something should be stopped. So there's both of those cases, right? But because this 1 minute blocks thing particularly has a lot of historic weight to it, there's a lot of room, I think, for people to dislike it just because they haven't sat with it long enough to kind of see the benefit. And we've also seen, like, when I talk to Joma or when I talk to the guys from the Bitcoin Cash City, like, there's various people who are kind of like, well, I don't see the need for this. Everything's working fine for me. And those people potentially could have voted a maybe or an unsure, but they also could have potentially voted dislike. Like, there seems to be some people who don't, you're saying you see the need for it really clearly.
The numbers themselves are like kind of like an indicator, but they're not actually what matters. What matters is the concerns that are being brought up and how valid those concerns actually are. And that is not measured by these polls. And so it's kind of hard to have a discussion around whether or not. And I can say with absolute certainty that 1 minute blocks has more people that has currently valid concerns around it than the other ones. It impacts so many other systems, and it changes a lot.
Yeah, and we certainly need to.
I really want it.
Yeah, well, that's right. I think there's still some room, with the research on miner centralization that is being done there. I think talking to the exchanges and getting more feedback from exchanges and mining pools is going to be very, very important over the next year. But that is to say, even if this was proposed for 2026 lock-in, or rather 2027 lock-in, which will be the 2027 upgrade, that means we're still 15 months away from lock-in. So there's a long window of time there and plenty of work that could be done in that aspect. Okay, so I think that's pretty clear on the upgrades. Then we got an excellent announcement this week from Fernando from the Knuth team and BCH Argentina. They were working on a scalability initiative and released some results in a new, I don't know what was the right word, project or product, technology research innovation, which they call UTXO-Z or UTXO-Z. I don't know if they would prefer the British or American saying. They have reworked a custom database optimized for UTXOs. The numbers were massively improved on LevelDB, which is the current software used in most of the node implementations. So they recorded 33 million lookups per second for recent outputs, which is 45 times faster than LevelDB. So we can imagine maybe if you were syncing a node and you were only looking at the last 50,000 blocks or something like that, you could potentially have, it won't be quite this high, but up to 45x faster, which could be massive if we also had UTXO commitments. So you can start at a checkpoint close to the tip and then get up to speed on all the recent UTXOs. That could be massive. And it's up to 2x faster, 1.5 million lookups per second for the complete sync from Genesis. So that's also still like doubling the speed of a sync is massive, and up to 2.5x faster initial block download once this is all taken into consideration. They put out a research paper and they're going to be putting out code for this, I believe, in the next week or two. They already had a link to the GitHub, but it's just not online yet, and I'm sure they will deliver that soon. So this is just amazing to see BCH putting up industry-leading research and development, especially if, and I believe the plan was also to, this is not just for Knuth node, they will also, if they can operate it, right, will be able to put it into the other BCH nodes, so the entire ecosystem will benefit from this kind of speed up. What do you make of this, Jonathan? Is this just like next level BCH work yet again? It certainly seems so to me.
I have been waiting quite a lot of years on this. If you go back to about 2017 or around there, then Bitcoin Unlimited had been doing their stress test and figure out like what parts of the system are clearly slower than other parts. And one of the things that came out, I can't remember exactly when, was a description of a new database system that goes away from the generalized database structures and instead focuses on a write heavy and database that takes significant advantage of the immutability properties of the Bitcoin blockchain. Like, these data structures are not going to change. Transaction comes in, the transaction cannot change. It might be included, it might not be included, but the transaction itself does not change. And so understanding these mutability properties on the actual data structure, some guy, I can't remember who, made a talk, and he utterly convinced me that we could get a lot of performance by not using a generalized database and instead having one where it doesn't matter, like you see transaction 2 times, you write them both types, but you write them at the same place, and you don't have to confirm that you have written them down. You don't need to check if it was there before, you just write it and you get done. And that was brilliant. I think that was brilliant. I've been waiting for someone to do that. And here comes UTXO-Z, and it's nothing like that. UTXO-Z does not primarily focus on taking advantage of the immutability properties of the blockchain. No, UTXO-Z primarily tries to take advantage of the hardware that it is running on so that it has strong cache locality for the data that it's working on, so that it doesn't have to go back to disk when it doesn't need to, and doesn't have to switch context and things like that. I don't understand all of this. I've read a lot from that paper, and I've read a lot of things, but I'm not a computer wizard in that degree. I don't. These things I can get high level concept. I would not understand the code if I looked at it, but I can see that it's a different approach. And I really appreciate the work that we put in, and I think this is great, and that it moves the needle forward if it becomes adopted by the other nodes, and it turns out in practice to be as good as it is in theory. Well, time will tell, of course, if that's true. But now I can't stop thinking, like, oh boy, what if you had this and the immutability aspect of the blockchain taken into account? Could you get even better? I don't know. I have no clue.
And people were asking as well about, if we have this, then do we not need UTXO commitments? But it's kind of like, no, they multiply,
No, we need that. Yeah, this does not replace UTXO commitments.
It doesn't replace it, but it's very helpful. Like, having both is just killer if we can be getting all these things as we stack them up, each improvement on top of the other.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, you also have hardware also improving. Like, this idea, it just pops up so much. It's such a common source of disinformation that I see from BTC-related people or whatever. Oh, the initial block download. Like, obviously, they have more of a cultural emphasis on running those nodes, but they're so concerned about larger blocks is going to wreck everything, which it really isn't. You just need to have some high quality devs like we do fixing these problems.
So I think even without UTXO-Z, we're good for a decennia forward without any big problems. With UTXO-Z, you might double that, 2 decennia, 3 decennia, long time, right? And UTXO-Z seems to be like just good, nothing really bad about it, as far as I can tell. But it doesn't address the actual problem of infinite growth.
Yes.
It only addresses it
sync time,
impacts our speed, the sync time right now, by some margin. But if you imagine, right, if you do a thought experiment and you say, okay, how does the Bitcoin Cash blockchain look 450 million years from now? Then the answer is UTXO doesn't matter. 450 million years from now, the headers alone for that chain is so large that it's ridiculous. Of course, we'd have different technology then, but just for the sake of the experiment, like if you take it out to an absurdly long time range, then you get the people who sit on Twitter and tell you that Bitcoin Cash is bad, right? The people who say you can't possibly scale on-chain because if we go 450 million years into the future, then we're not there yet, man. We're going to build along the way. But UTXO commitments, they actually qualitatively address the 450 million years away case. And you can go to those people and say, yeah, we proved we still have only the relevant state. Everything works. What are you so grinded up at, man? Let us build a good system over here. So they address 2 very different things, right?
Yes.
And UTXO-Z might very well be the more practical of them, the one that we actually kind of need
first, yeah. I mean, we'll get to both. But the thing is, I mean, just to be clear, those people who are propagandized, even UTXO-Z, UTXO commitments, all this, the immutable stuff, doesn't matter if we could have syncing the whole chain in 1 hour with enormous blocks. Like, it's never going to change their mind. They just refuse to listen to any of this stuff. But regardless, it's important that we actually solve the problem, whether or not they will eventually recognize that.
Yeah. The good part is we don't need to convince them. Right?
Yes.
We solve the problem and then we onboard everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so speaking of those propagandized people, we've got an update on our friend Bitcoin Mechanic. I almost felt like, do we really need to spend the time on the show to do this at this point? But because we made several predictions on the episode 151, we're already seeing some payoffs from that. So we have a little meme clip that I edited together from his recently put out. This is not from his most recent video because he's now started putting out multiple videos per week ranting about his frustrations with the BTC, disaster, essentially. But I've edited together this particular bit to highlight some of his frustrations and the things that we called out and predicted in May on episode 151. So let's hear what he had to say.
Some point, and we really don't want to trigger them to do that. I don't want to do a fork, and I'm being sincere when I say that. People keep saying you're the next Roger Ver, when hard fork, when soft fork, whatever, and I keep saying I don't want to do that. I could do a soft fork without being the next Roger Ver, obviously, because that was hard fork, not soft fork. But I don't want to do that. I never ever want to concede that the appropriate venue for fighting spam in Bitcoin is not the mempool, because it is. That
a few moments later,
very quickly. It's just the fact that why is stuff that can do any damage at all getting merged into the reference client? If the developers are that malicious or that stupid, take your pick, then the project is not in good hands. And if the community is not able to respond to that in the appropriate manner, which is dispose of these people and replace them or completely abandon and stampede away from that client, if those reactions do not happen, then we are asleep at the wheel and Bitcoin is going to go off the rails and fall apart. It's just a matter of time. You're looking at people that don't know what they're doing or that know exactly what they're doing and actively want to do something bad, being in charge, and a community that isn't awake enough to pay attention to that. If that's the case, then Bitcoin is going to die, and it's not going to... I need people to understand second and third order effects and, I guess, deeper implications of the fact that bad stuff is getting merged in. You can't merge in bad code into Bitcoin and then go, yeah, but that bad code doesn't immediately destroy Bitcoin when they release that client, and go, therefore it's fine. Of course it's not fine. It's just, again, I got into this conversation yesterday. People are like, look, I likened it to having an argument about which stab wound was the one that killed Julius Caesar. Was it the 9th one or the 10th one? Which was it, the 11th one? People say it was the 12th one. Who cares? The point is, why is this guy getting stabbed by people he trusts? He's going to end up dead if he's in that situation. I don't need to get caught up in the minutiae of it. It's irrelevant. I don't need to sit here and talk about which decision by Bitcoin Core was the one that killed Bitcoin. I just need people to go, it's under attack by its developers, and we need to acknowledge that and get away from it. Otherwise, we're fucked. That's the only position I'm taking here. It's very obvious, and I don't want to get caught up in these stupid ifs and these horse trading conversations. Well, what if this happens?
A few moments later.
Didn't say that it wasn't our fault. Like, we were cloud seeding, we were doing weather modification. But by the way, if you believe weather modification happens, that's a conspiracy theory. The problem is everyone doesn't go from A to B in a smooth motion. And it's like Edward Snowden's point. You just end up with like, oh, they're not spying on us, that's a conspiracy theory. And somehow like 90% of people believe that and 10% don't, who everyone thinks is paranoid, conspiracy theorists. And then you end up in a world where like 60% of people know they are spying on us and 40% don't. And it suddenly it's not really a conspiracy theory anymore. It's just kind of a thing we all know about and don't really care about. That's how frogs get boiled.
We got the hijacking Bitcoin cover at the end there. But I just want to say, like, this is really just exactly what we explained on that episode, right? So he's recognized that Bitcoin is under attack. The community's asleep. The frog is boiling. His frustration is growing and growing and growing until his cognitive dissonance has to break. But it is literally all the things that we pointed out then. Of course, the 10% of people that he's talking about who start out outside the conspiracy theory, that was the Bcashers who are outside the information bubble that has now popped. And now the hijacking and Bitcoin Core malicious, that's just been like common knowledge, quote unquote, in his mind now that it wasn't before. It's amazing to me that he can give these analogies about, was it the 10th stabbing or the 11th stabbing that caused the problem, but then he can't understand, like, he is catching up to the BCH story late. He still thinks that there's some artificial dividing line at which he caught on. Anyway, I said that he was ping-ponging back and forth between, is it malicious or ignorant devs? He kind of says, I don't want to get caught in the minutia, but then he also is trying to draw these kind of lines between soft and hard forks, which is nonsense. He says he doesn't want to do a fork, but then he also need to do a mass migration away and just dump the Bitcoin Core devs entirely, which is not, he thinks it can be done with knots, but it can't, because he's also trying to have his cake there and eat it as well, where when he wants to be rebellious, he says, run Bitcoin knots and we'll show those Bitcoin Core guys. And then when people say, yeah, but that's got very little institutional support, it's, coded mostly by Luke Jr. and maybe one or two other guys, then he says, no, but it's mostly Bitcoin Core. It just is a few patches. So we still have, he's trying to have his cake and eat it there too. All of this is obviously, exactly what we already explained. So if you haven't watched episode 151, you can go watch that and see that podcast wins another round. And things are going from bad to worse, of course. Yesterday, Gloria, classic, emerged a PR for lowering the minimum relay fee. So he's now 0.2 in the hole with the op return extension lengths got merged, and this other one also has been merged, and it will be shipping in October. Knots is only at 17%, so they're going to need to move fast if they want to stop that getting rammed down their throats, but it's going to happen anyway. Jonathan, what do you make of this? This is just a complete clown show at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll just agree with you there. Like the first assumption that says the community is asleep, I think it's wrong. I don't think the community is asleep. I think there's a better explanation. The community is fractured. It's fractured in three groups. The people who care about A the people who care about A but in a different way, and the people who don't care about A. And the people who don't care about A, they are the vast majority. The vast majority. And so whatever the filterers or filterers or non-filterers or whatever group you have there at the moment, they will never become an active majority. They might become larger than a different minority, but that doesn't really matter, because the power to make change here, they gave that away to the Bitcoin reference client when they shouldn't have had.
Yeah, exactly. And on that topic, we also got here community comment of the week. Things have also just been exactly like you're saying, falling apart among the fractured different, Twitterati. Vlad Kostia with a fresh tweet from August the 13th, 4 days ago, saying, quote, Bitcoin big blockers were right about the problem, but wrong about the solution, end quote. Of course, he was unable to elaborate what exactly we got wrong about the solution, and it's incredibly arrogant of him to say, well, you guys were onto the problem that I didn't see 9 years ago, but also somehow your solutions, which you've actively implemented and been working on and still exist today and have improved the whole time, are not as good as my imaginary solution, which I've done absolutely nothing about and only decided we needed in the last week. That's beyond ridiculous. And also Corey Clipston from swan.com, who, if you go back to, was it episode 12 or 18, where we did the kim.com review and we caught him and his crew getting wrecked in a debate and then trying to delete it and cover it up. And then we later had on the show those guys that on Twitter couldn't believe it when we showed to them their own content that they had deleted. They thought we'd manufactured their own content because they had censored themselves. Anyway, he said, quote, from Corey Clipson, quote, I too want Bitcoin to be adopted as a medium of exchange, which I expect to take off in the West in the 2035 to 2060 timeframe. Would be incredibly fast for a new global money, end quote. So he is also prepared to spend another 10 years with their store of value narrative before they actually get around to competing as P2P cash. So it's just all around a bit of a disaster. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that either, Jonathan.
Yeah, so what Vlad is saying there is entirely wrong in my opinion. It's a great soundbite, but it doesn't seem to have a strong foundation. So it says like Bitcoin big blockers were right about the problem, but wrong about the solution. And I'll argue it's the exact opposite, like literally 100%, 180, exact opposite. Big blockers were not right about the problem, but they were definitely right about the solution. So we have known and we have demonstrated technically over and over that the UTXO model is highly scalable. We have shown that we can achieve the kind of global scale that was required. And that's no longer a theoretical, that's proven, that we've done our scale nets, we have done our testing, we have written our code, it's there. The problem, the problem was that we didn't identify the correct scale of the problem that we wanted to solve. So when we took that Bitcoin back in 2015 or whatnot, Bitcoin was everything. Bitcoin was a store of value. It was a medium of exchange. It was speculative asset. It was literally whatever vehicle you needed it to be if you were there and excited. Bitcoin was it for you. And the big blockers who was focused on peer-to-peer money for the world or payments use case more narrowly, we see how valuable it is, right? The payments use case on a global scale is massively valuable. The problem is that the payments use case was not in such a bad state for the vast majority of users. Most people went about their days and paid for things and it worked for them. Of course, there were people who, hit the edges of the system, right? There were people who were doing, they were selling products and services that might have fallen on like some immoral side according to some entity somewhere, and who got their things shut off. There were people who were trying to do things that like technically are illegal, but legality is something that changes over time, and so they can't easily integrate into the system. So we have some amount of usage. I consider it the black market. And the black market had friction in their payments, and they were absolutely looking for a better payment system. The gray market barely didn't care, and the rest of the market didn't have a problem to begin with. So the value of solving for payments, if you were just going to be like a one-for-one comparison, you didn't have that much of a target audience to sell your product to. But the speculative number go up case, people who want to get rich fast, oh boy, that is a big market. Lots of people on this planet wants to get rich fast, right? And so the small blocker, the investment vehicle who catered to that need very effectively, they absolutely grew to a larger market share than Bitcoin did. But at the same time, saying we were like right about the problem, I don't think we were. I think we were misguided about the scale and value of the problem back then. And I think if we look at it and stretch it out into the future, I think our problem is going to become more valuable over time because as the fiat system collapses, thankfully as a natural result of Bitcoin existing as a store of value component, there's going to become harder and harder to exit, as Andreas says it, that gilded cage. And as the system starts clamping down and starts restricting and start obstructing and start controlling, then suddenly the friction will be there. And when the friction is there, oh, well, now we have our actual addressable market for the payments use case. And that is when we actually will shine massively. But even today, if we ignore that side, if you look at us, we're still a 10 billion something network in US dollars. That's not something to scoff at. And we are growing. I mean, how many other companies can you look at and say, oh, they're just 10 billion something in value, total market cap, and they were wrong about everything they do. We're not entirely wrong, right?
Yes, I mean, to be fair, and I mean, I always, love this topic because the fact of the matter is the big blockers were right, like you said, about the technical details, and they were completely right about the hijacking and all that, but still lost and still had a lot of problems because there was so much cope and so forth about the way the miners acted, which, to be fair, at the time had no precedent. So everybody was kind of guessing. And I guess on the big block side, there was a lot more lessons that needed to be learned there. We were completely wrong about a lot of the politics, about the branding, about, what needed to be done to win back mindshare after the split, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There was a lot of problems that BCH has made. But the thing is, BCH has, fixed those and is working on fixing those at a far faster rate now. And secondly, the fundamental problems were shallower, right? These problems of the hijacking and so forth are so deep in the system that even now, Bitcoin Mechanic is struggling to figure out what it is. And these other guys like Vlad can't figure it out either, or maybe he's just coping. And Corey doesn't even know there's a problem yet. And it's like, if I had seen a way to start a BTC podcast and turn around all their minds and then get them onto the same track that BCH is on now, I would have done that because it has a bigger network effect and so forth. But it's just not going to happen. They're just not going to figure it out. But anyway, all right, we got one more thing we got to get onto today, just quickly. Monero has been suffering a 51% attack, although yet again, there's been a lot of cope about the fact that technically it's not a 51% attack because they haven't actually reversed any transactions. But regardless, Cubic Mining Pool have been doing some kind of scheme where because Monero can be mined with GPU chips, and they had a bunch of them that they needed for, I think, for AI, but I'm not too clear on the details. You can dig into this more if you want to know all about it. Basically, they found a way that they can profit from mining Monero more than somebody just regularly mining Monero by using their own token to do buybacks and also simultaneously do some kind of AI thing. That's basically the idea, I think. But anyway, they announced that they were going to take over Monero and get 51% control, which a bunch of pundits said, no, this is just FUD, it's not going to happen. And then a week later, it did actually happen. And they have done 6 or 7 block reorgs at least once. They've been delisted from Kraken now for being insecure, and the price has plummeted from rank 23 down to rank 30, although I think they're doing a little better today. So they are currently in a mess trying to figure out how to stop this and what to do about it. My main point about it is that I've been told for many years by Monero people on Twitter that you really want to have GPUs so that everyone can mine. It's much more decentralized, etc. And I've tried to explain to them, no, actually ASICs is better, because the whole point of the mining is to make it hard to attack the network. It's not to be some kind of democratized political system. People kind of get the wrong end of the stick on that. And all the fanboys of GPUs are now reaping what they sowed in terms of AI cropping up, driving huge demand for chips, and now making them vulnerable to these attacks. But it's certainly a fascinating time in cryptocurrency history to see them struggling with this kind of thing. Jonathan, have you been following this story, or do you want to chip in on what's going on here?
I have seen some of it, and like some people argue that this could happen to BCH because BCH is such a small part, the amount of money required isn't that big. But I think BCH has a fundamentally different position, and I'll go into detail on that. So if you look at BCH's past, when we split off from Bitcoin, there was a lot of miners moving back and forth. And there was a point in time where the value of BCH were low, and some miners went in and started mining empty blocks, I think it was, to disturb the network. And what happened at that point was that other miners went in despite there being no sufficient short-term profit motive. It wasn't more sensible for them to mine BCH than it was to mine Bitcoin. Yet they still stepped in and started mining blocks with transactions in them and stopped that deadlock from happening. And if I look back on this and I ask, what is the financial incentive? Why were they doing this? Then one could argue that, oh, maybe they're just idealists, right? Maybe they just liked Bitcoin Cash. And to some degree, I'm sure that's true. But I think there's a more fundamentally valuable thing here that I haven't heard that many other people talk about. And it's that if Bitcoin fails, right, if something goes wrong with Bitcoin, where will all the miners go? Their hardware, they do the SHA-256 according to the Bitcoin structures, right? They're pretty hard optimized for that. They can't go do other things. So if you are a company and you're trying to provide stability for your income for the 10, 50 years into the future, maybe it's not a good idea to put all your eggs in one basket and then proclaim that no one can step on this basket, it's impossible, just to taunt people into doing it. It's not a good idea. A better idea is to make sure that you have several baskets with eggs in them in different places. And they might not be the best eggs or the largest stacks of eggs or the most important eggs, every one of them. It might be that some of them are just for a rainy day. Right? But if something does go wrong with Bitcoin, all that SHA-256 hashing hardware will need somewhere to go that still has meaningful value and liquidity, or that hardware gets entirely destroyed in value. But from the Monero perspective, we're talking about GPU miners here. And if they destroy Monero, well, their GPUs are still valuable, right? They just go to the next network because there are so many different networks that are GPU mineable that it doesn't really matter. So they don't have this incentive to protect a network that isn't their most profitable at the moment. Their incentive is essentially do what's like, think a week or a month or whatever time frame ahead, and that's good enough for them. But if you're gonna buy hundreds of millions of dollars of SHA-256 hardware, and you look at what coins there are out there that can do it, you want to protect that investment, even if that means offering 0.5% of your profit margin to defend a network at a loss. I think that's the underlying difference between things here.
Yeah, I agree. It's the analogy I use to describe it to people is if you owned a gold mine and a smaller silver mine, would you ever stop your gold miners from mining gold? And not only that, you would send them to attack your own other miners in your silver mine. Like, that's just an L on so many fronts. You're disrupting your gold mine, you're disrupting your silver mine, you're doing it to yourself. Like, it's just a shitty idea on every single front. So BCH is well protected, or at least historically has been in that regard. Obviously, the best thing is for us to pump the price, build transaction volume, have sustainable fee revenue, and then attract back hash rate, and then become harder to attack. And that's the long-term solution, which we're working on. But in the short term, between that and having a 10-block checkpoint, we seem to be fairly resilient. And even on top of that, even if there was an attacks, like, cryptocurrencies have shown to be very, very resilient. So I'm not counting XMR out at all after suffering these attacks. Who knows what they will do, change, maybe even the attacker will get bored and piss off. Like, I don't know. But cryptocurrencies are pretty resilient in that way. But I thought it was a good opportunity to bring up this point about why is ASICs so important, because plenty of people, similar to the whole UTXO thing, plenty of people are just like, oh no, GPUs is better. They have some kind of political idea that the white paper says one CPU, one vote, and therefore everybody in the world, like some utopia, will be mining on their laptop in some fair, like, decentralized system. Like, that's not specializations. That's not capitalism. That's not how any of this works or ever was going to work. So actually, you're better off with ASICs. All right. A message to the community, your chance to round it off. Final thoughts, Jonathan. What does the BCH community need to hear?
Yeah, I don't know. Keep staying engaged in the shifts we have. It's good that everyone looks at it, everyone talks about it. Make sure that we build a strong and reliable foundation for the future. Come to the event, spend BCH where you can spend BCH. Just use the things if it makes sense to you.
Amazing. Okay, all right. Well, shout out to our FundMe contributors, where the FundMe is running now for episodes 156 to 165. You can find that at fundme.cash. It has only 10 or 11% needed. So if it's only a couple BCH, if people could get us over the line, that would be much appreciated. The show continues to grow. We're nearly at 3,000 YouTube subscribers. In fact, we might have even hit it during this live stream. So we're doing the best we can to put out all this content and all the promotion. So whatever support you can give us would be much appreciated. Our FundMe contributors, Majamali Marcelo, Jeremy is made of whatever profits are made of, Molecular, the show we love, at Cash Stamps, Keep Building and Broaching, Erdogan Talk, Economics Writer, Big Hair, love the show, love your hair, Milton Friedman, Purely Peer, purelypeer.cash, discover the thrill of quest hunting, find hidden cash drops, and collects BCH, Ryan Giffen, Keep It Up Boys, and DGN and FurQ, fresh hardcore BCH rap anthem coming at ya, the Green Comeback Kids, get it at https://nwb.cash, which I was actually listening to before the show. Maybe we'll have that in the outro music one week, but not this week, unfortunately. The supporter appreciation, thank you to our donators and our patrons, Ricky and Kyle, and our sponsors, General Protocols. Check out bchbull.com, Start Guide, FAQ, and links are at bitcoincashpodcast.com. If you're new to the show, check out episode 85 and try Selene Wallet at selene.cash. Final shout outs, Jonathan.
No, not needed.
Nothing.
You're all great.
Nothing. Okay, Jet, any final words? Nope. Okay, I'm just going to say if you're interested in Blaze, check out at BCH Blaze on Twitter. And you can also find the Telegram group. Just ask around in the Telegram groups, or you can go to bchblaze.cash for the links and the information. You can also sign up on the Dora Hacks page. And if you're interested in sponsoring or helping to run the event or being a participant or anything, just reach out to us, because that is all spinning up now. And our outro song today will be Pump It Up by Endor. I had several people requesting some more kind of meme style promotion, so we have delivered with a video remix of this classic cryptocurrency hype song. So next time you need to get fired up about the BCH price gains or just the BCH traction in general, you can take a listen to this. So this will be Pump It Up, the BCH Maximalist remix. Okay. One final thing. Shout out to Double O Tats and Cash Dragon in the chat. And Cash Dragon also confirms Monero is not mined with GPU, it is mined with CPU. So I'm not sure if we're spreading some disinformation there. I still feel like maybe it is GPU. I think I was reading about that, but maybe it is CPU in any case, if we were wrong. Now, you know, the main points we said still stand. Okay, all right, that's it. No disinformation on this show. Okay, thank you all for listening. Until next time.
Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Up, 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 up. Don't you know?